I'm not so very used to speak in English, so I have to little help. Excuse me for that. I want to tell you a little bit about our house, Landgoedhuis Schouwenburg. In November 2008, my husband and I bought this landgoed, Huis Schouwenburg, and by that time the house was in a very bad condition. The oldest part of the Schouwenburg are dating from 1620, and we could retrieve all the inhabitants from, or owners from that time until today. The owners were nearly all of noble birth, various noble families, and the house had a history with a lot of ups and downs, but it survived until today. The last noble inhabitant, difficult word, was the lady von Sietsema, and she left the house in 1976. She was old then and had no children. And she sold the house to Stichting Het Gouders Landschap. That's an organization that they aim to preserve nature and characteristic landscape in the province of Gelderland. After that, the house was rented to a religious institution sheltering young people with problems in society and drug addicts and so on. All the rooms were divided into two because they could house more clients that way. This organization was very good for its clients, but not so very good for the house. It left after 26 years, and it took Het Gouders Landschap 7 years to find a new destination for this house, and that were 7 years with no maintenance at all. And after that, we found ourselves the proud owners of a very charming big problem. There was a lot to be done. This is the other side of the house, and I can assure you the vegetation was not only growing on the outside. It is said that when you buy a house like this, a monument, a piece of national heritage, it's yours only for the time being. It's your task to keep it and to hand it over to a next generation who will have to look after it and in due time again will hand it over. And that's the way how monuments survive the ages. Before I tell you what we have done, I want to show you some of the most important moderations that were made to the house in history. This is the main room, the main hall, as it looked when we bought the house. In the first half of the 17th century, this room had a wooden ceiling with heavy beams, and there was an open fireplace in the end. We found, hoe doet hij dat? Wat is nou de knoppie? Here next to the chimney we found the remnants of the old fireplace in the beginning of the 18th century. In 1777 the Baron Adolf von Spaan bought Schouwenburg, and he decided to modernize the hall up to the latest fashion. And he introduced this white plaster ceiling with flowers and birds. The birds represent the seasons, winter, spring, summer and fall. That must be a shocking change from a dark brown beams to this white plaster ceiling. But it was a very important change. Up to this day, this beautiful ceiling is the most admired part of the house. And it made the house representative, and it made it worthwhile to preserve. Is the plaster ceiling during restoration, and underneath is how it looks now. By the way, the piano in the corner belongs to the museum, and we could lend it to give concerts in our house. Another major modification was made half a century, a little bit more than half a century later, around 1840. The granddaughter of this Adolf was Louisa van Spaan, and she built a new coach house. Here is the coach house before our restoration, and on the other side after. Louisa moved also the staircase, and we found a strange beam, this one. It was a rough beam with holes in it. And we were quite puzzled by this extraordinary construction element. And the beam was used to close the old stairwell, and because a new stair was constructed in another spot. This beam turned out to be the pole of the haystack. The haystack was demolished together with the old coach house, and they want to reuse everything. So that's a way of sustainability in 1840. We had to strengthen the floor because the floor was sagging more than 9 centimeters, and I planned to put my bath here. We had to strengthen the floor with heavy beams. And that's on the other pictures. This same room now looks like this. Most important change this Louisa did was the landscape. She changed the formal symmetrical gardens into the formal gardens. Here is Schouwburg, and these are the symmetrical formal gardens around 1807 into the English landscape style. Again, that was made after the latest fashion. These changes made Schouwburg again a desirable difficult word, place to live in. However, Louisa didn't enjoy her alterations very much. She fell in love with a neighbor, and she moved to the mansion next door. A third modification was in 1911. We found the drawings of this buildings in an archive in Zwolle. The Baron Maurits Pico van Sietsema became mayor from Doornsberg and later from Oldbroek, both villages near Schouwburg. He decided to modernize the house. He built a new kitchen to the side and a new garden room. This is a picture before and a picture after. Here's the garden room and the kitchen. He also installed flushed toilets, a water flush toilet, and next to it there was a poop box for the personal, only a shelf with a hole for the personal. And this, this little house was a little building with a plant to produce gas out of petroleum for the gas lighting of the house. At that moment, the house was more than up to date. It was technically sophisticated. And all these changes I described made in their time the house ready to survive another half century. When we started restoration in 2009, we had to think what needs the house for the next 50 years. In the first place, we want to preserve the character of the building and the details that make the house so special. The historic elements had to be restored. But nowadays, we want a warm and comfortable house and a small energy bill. We don't want to depend on fossil fuels. We want to produce a minimum of carbon dioxide. And this time, it's important to be sustainable. In principle, and that's what Jörn already said, the house is already durable. The efforts invested to make the marble floor can be spread over 400 years. And even the latest addition, the kitchen, is already 100 years old. But apart from that, the house was cold, damp, draughty, and it produced enormous energy bills. Absolutely not sustainable. It's quite difficult to add insulation to an old monumental house without affecting the monumental values. But we found a lot of measures that could improve the comfort and the sustainability. The roof was insulated with a very thin multi-layered foil between the roof deck and the tiles. It's invisible and very thin, and it has an amazing effect in winter as well as in summer. We added a swing door behind the front door, and we made the inside shutters work again. This is the front door before and after, and the lamp is shining inside as well as outside. Here again are the inside shutters in the main hall, and we invested in heavy curtains. These measures have more effect than double glazing, provided that the shutters are used indeed. Here the effect of the insulation depends on the behavior of the inhabitant. We also did a lot to prevent the draught, replacing rusty hinges, adding nearly invisible rubber strips. We didn't apply double glazing for several reasons. Most windows or roofs were too thin for double glazing, and sliding windows would become too heavy for the counterweights. And there's another reason. The single glass is always the coldest place in a room. When the atmosphere is too damp, condensation will occur on the glass. But when the glass is insulated, the condensation might occur in other places. For instance, between the window frame and the stone wall. And that will result in rotting window frames. For the heating, we choose an installation on sun energy and biomass. On the roof are 16 square meters of sun collectors, and they produce hot water. And in the basement, there are 2 heating boilers burning on pellets. These are pellets. It's purely pressed wood. In the attic, here, is an enormous buffer tank. And in this tank, the heat is accumulated. And from this tank, there are 4 separate circuits installed. The first is for warm water and for bath and shower. The second for a high temperature heating system. The third for a low temperature heating system. And the last circuit heats a similar tank here in the attic of the coach house. And the coach house is provided with heating and warm water in 2 apartments there. The low temperature heating is used for floor and wall heating. Here you see the heating net applied to the walls of the second floor corridor and the floor of the kitchen. The stone mass of the walls are heated up to 20 or max 25 degrees. And it makes you feel very comfortable in the house. The high temperature heating is in a very different way sustainable. This is what we bought, and it was restored, and now the central heating looks like this. Even the modern thermostatics look old with our modern thermostatics. This is the kitchen, before and after. We live in another way than our ancestors. We have no personal in the kitchen. I prepare our dinner myself, and we eat in the kitchen. So we made a veranda door in the kitchen,